So I think there's sort of this superficial element of this where you want to make sure that whatever you're doing is perceived to be in line with the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish. And then also, I think the content itself has to, has to be true and sort of, represent a brand that you feel allows you to sleep at night.
Mm-hmm. Do what you say what you do, right?
Yep, exactly.
And I think that people who've had challenges in their life or dealt with hardships or failures or been on the underneath had the foot on your neck kind of guys, I think those are the people that really try and stand out as far as their integrity goes. That was me. I was always an underachiever, an overperformer, underachiever type, but I always was able to do what you said, is put my head on my pillow at night and go, you know what, I did a great fucking job today, and it didn't mess with my integrity, so I can sleep well, and I've seen a lot of other people not do that, and they've lost something in themselves, or they never get it, never get it. And that's why I was interested in bringing you on, because I did watch a couple of your interviews, and I said, there's a little more to this guy than just some tech geek out there. This guy ticks a different way. And to have embraced Hex like you have with your site, while everybody else is gatekeeping, I really wanted to speak to that and hear, what was the reason for not following the status quo and for picking Hex, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be the one that does this to this product here like the rest of them have.
So we weren't built, I think there's a certain class of aggregator that kind of considers themselves to be a ratings agency and a curator. And from day one, we wanted to be the opposite of that. If someone publishes a token, we're going to list it. And we have no interest in gatekeeping. We have no interest in, being a tastemaker or, sort of putting our stamp on various projects and saying that we endorse them or we don't. We simply want to present the data. And to the extent that we think that the data is truthful and it isn't, it isn't the result of wash trading or fraudulent activity, and we have things in place to catch that. To the extent that we believe the data is correct, we think it should be presented. And so I really don't understand. I mean, I have some theories about the gatekeeping that's happening to Hex and why some of the other providers are doing it. And I think for some of them, it has to do with their sort of the technical limitations of their engineering org. So I'd say, like, I personally, I bought a little Hex, and I hold some BTC. Yeah. And I hold some BTC, and I, when you could get some free Hex, I did that too. So I'm staking some Hex. I'd say, it's not inaccurate to say that I'm a supporter of Hex, but I think Nomics as a whole just believes in, publishing the truth as it exists, and trying to keep our opinions out as much as possible. So I'd say whether my opinion of Hex was favorable or negative is pretty much irrelevant. We're just trying to publish the truth, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to the extent that we can.
When the first time Nomics was brought to the community, and I mean, it was a hallelujah day. It was like, everybody, Nomics Finance is finally, somebody is actually, putting our true market cap up, and it was like wildfire through the community, and everybody became Nomics fans at that point, and
awesome.
We've all been using that's all we promote, is like, if you want to see the real price of Hex, if you want to see take the real temperature of cryptocurrencies and Hex itself, go to Nomics. And that's our whole narrative.
That's awesome. And we're really grateful. It's the last I checked, at least on Google, when it comes to Google's we track roughly 3,000, roughly 3,500 key terms ranked by Google. And we're currently in third place among the aggregators in terms of who Google is sending traffic to. So, number one is CoinMarketCap, number two is CoinGecko, number three is Nomics. So, we attribute the sort of the success we've had to the fact that we list everything. And I think there's more communities. There's several communities that have just been unfairly treated by some of the other people that we welcome into the fold and that we want to include. And I think when we first put Hex where it is, we received some comments and we had an internal conversation about, is this going to be a liability to the trustworthy of our site? And I guess what we came away with was that it really doesn't matter what the academic class, the tastemakers think. And I think that's where I don't understand the stance that some of the maximalists have towards Hex. It's a smart contract. It's on the blockchain. You could go look at the code. So I don't know what the issue.
And here we are in the beginning of November with what many of us saw was coming, which is an adjustment to the circulating supply of Hex, which is affected its ranking on the top list and pushed it down somewhere below the 15th place. I think it's sitting somewhere between 19 and 20 right now. Now, most Hexicans at this point will be feeling betrayed, be feeling that they had some sort of understanding or partnership or relationship to a degree with an aggregator that was finally going to portray Hex properly, right? And so it's natural for a lot of those feelings to be going on right now. And I also can relate to Clay in terms of just how long this piece must have taken him to write. How many times he must have proofread this, how many times he must have looked this over, had somebody else look this over, trying to, dot every I and cross every T to make sure that he had a well-insulated case. And I think he does a decent job of that. So I'd like to walk through a couple pieces of this with you and then point out, obviously, the big glaring question that you've probably got at this point, which is how come there isn't fair treatment across the board? And we'll really explore that together. So he starts off with, kind of covering where he's at and mentioning that this is going to be more of an FAQ style of a post, right? So he did engage for, as you saw up until this point, for about a month or two before, they made this decision. So he says, I can promise you that we'll never cop out by gatekeeping you to number 201 market cap ranking like CoinMarketCap, or failing to even post a circulating supply at all like CoinGecko. We'll do our very best to list PulseChain assets before anyone else. We'll try to list every single PulseChain asset, even very new ones with low volumes. That's kind of a weird thing to say. We'll always stay in dialogue with you, and we're open to evolving the stance outlined below over time. Okay, so he kind of covers market cap and how it's pretty skewed and how you could technically game it to a degree, but let's start at the top here. So the big issue is that 90% of Hex is owned by the OA. And so since that doesn't move, then it should be taken out of circulating supply. So here he states that, yeah, the OA can be moved, so why don't you consider them circulating? And these are the reasons why they can't. So, for example, tokens that are on smart contract ERC20 or BEP20, we do not count assets as circulating if they are in the following addresses that are known and tagged. The issue is that, and what we're going to cover here at the end, is that many of these top 10, top 100 coins, they do have similar things going on where a small amount of people are holding a large amount of the tokens or coins. But the difference is that maybe they just haven't tagged the wallets or identified the wallets as being involved with the project. I mean, it's an optional thing. It doesn't automatically get tagged on Etherscan as a Binance wallet or not. They decide to label it that, or it's being tagged by somebody else in some sort of capacity, right? And there is ways to track down some of this. There are tools out there that you can pay a lot of money to go and track these things down and figure out and pinpoint the connections yourself. But they said that if you think that there's another coin that has a large amount of the tokens or coins sitting in a owner's or DAO member's wallet, then to, I guess, let them know. All right, so what is the OA? The OA is the originating address named in the Hex contract, receiver of Hex tokens based on certain contract interactions, such as penaltying from canceled stakes. Additionally, we consider addresses whose sole activity has been to receive tokens from the OA to be part of the OA network. He goes on to talk about, the Tesla example, Tim Cook example, but let's skip all that and get down to this right here. So what about Satoshi's coins? What about the lost Bitcoin? What about the Genesis wallet on ETH? And he doesn't really give a good answer. His answer is essentially those get a pass because they're older, and things that are launched on a smart contract on the ETH network, because there is such a high chance of rug pulls, that those get more scrutiny. So I guess the first question would be, over time and at what point in time do we cross over some sort of threshold where it gets grandfathered in, just like Bitcoin and the Genesis wallets and ETH do? Because obviously, yeah, that is I guess a decent point. Those have been around longer, and none of those have ever moved. So what is the timeline there so that, Hex could essentially, meet that same criteria and have those start to count as circulating supply again, just like Bitcoin and just like ETH? Now, another important point here is the overall question is, why are you so focused on Hex? I think this is an important point. I don't see him taking the same amount of time and energy and effort into other coins, but then again, we can assume there's a ton of people complaining about this, which has led to them taking a closer and closer look at this, right? It was the most controversial project in the top 10. Again, don't understand why, but it's something like, what is that? Comfortable lies versus uncomfortable truths. So people would rather have 90% of the coins held by 10 wallets or 100 wallets that they can pretend they don't know. We can all pretend is not involved in a project, but when you have 90% of the coins held by one wallet and that's never moved, well, then that becomes uncomfortable. Then that becomes something that, well, wait a second, let's take a look at this. And so that's the best way I can describe the focus that's been put onto Hex versus other projects. Okay, and then I just wanted to show you an example of how you can go in and look for yourself for top holders of any ERC20 project. Just go to etherscan.io. Here we are with 1inch. And 1inch, the top 100 holders collectively own 95.24% of the 1inch tokens. And you can see right here, if we just click on over to holders, you'll see everyone who's holding. So we will see some tagged wallets, right? This is a public tag. And so we got 1inch Foundation. You scroll down, we got Binance 14, 8, 7, and then 15 a little bit lower. Uniswap, 1inch Exchange, Airdrop, another Asian exchange. And so again, comfortable lies versus uncomfortable truths. 90% of the coins can be held by top 50, top 100. We know some of those, maybe we don't. Maybe some of them are faintly connected. Nobody's gonna go in and dig, because again, that's okay for us. But when it's 90% owned by one address that it doesn't move, it's super easy to find, it's super easy to track, then that's not okay. Imagine this from a coin holder's perspective. We're holding 1inch and we're trying to get a comprehensive understanding of the market and be able to track this thing so that we can see when nefarious characters are dumping or when whales are dumping, to attempt to, lock in gains or sell if we wanted to, right? You have to come in here and look through and possibly track thousands of wallets. But let's just say you stuck to the top 100. You now have to track 100 wallets and all of their movements, versus something like Hex, where you just have to track a couple wallets. I mean, we're talking probably 10 wallets or less that you track to keep very good idea and a very good overview idea of what's happening with the big holders in this product, right? And so what would you rather try and attempt to track and keep track of? Is 100 wallets or probably just one? If you really wanted to know if you're getting rugged or not, just keep an eye on the OA address, right? But you could also keep an eye on maybe the top 5 or 10 wallet addresses that are whales. So again, this is where transparency almost becomes a double-ended sword, because transparency which makes it easier for you to track your positions, understand what's happening within this product and within this coin, is used against it and is used as a means of it not being a good thing, and we need to remove it and make adjustments to the circulating supply. Believe it or not, 1 inch is actually one of the better examples. The worst is Cosmos. The top 100 holders collectively own 99.75% of all tokens. Axes, the game, the NFT game. The top 100 holders collectively own 99.7%. Huobi, or Ubi token, which is an Asian exchange. The top 100 holders collectively own 99.68%. KuCoin, another exchange. The top 100 holders collectively own 99.55%. FTT, which is the FTX exchange. The top 100 holders collectively own 99%. Celsius, the top 100 holders collectively own 98%. You're starting to understand the point here, right? There are an absolute ton of projects. In fact, there's 19 projects in front of Hex where the top 100 holders all collectively own 70% or more of the total tokens. Hex, the top 100 holders collectively own 47% of total tokens. So I think where most people are thinking right now is they would just like to see the rule applied evenly. The issue is that most people aren't complaining about those other projects, and apparently there must be a lot of people putting pressure about this project, about Hex, because that's the one that got the change, that's the one that got all the attention, and that's the one that got digging into. Whereas, how much are they really willing to look into these top 100 addresses on all these other projects to see and map and look at the behavior? Now, as I mentioned, there are tools that allow you to do this. Being an aggregator, they should probably have access to these tools or be paying for these tools, and they could easily see this for themselves, and they could track the behavior patterns of these wallets to see if there is more connections than they previously thought. I think that's at minimum what I would ask at this point, is that Clay and Nomics look at using these tools to track everyone else and make sure that they are correct with how they're classifying addresses and circulating supply with those projects. Otherwise, make the same adjustments and the same changes with those that they just did with Hex.
To drive a big point home, and it's why we clipped out so many pieces from the April 2021 interview with Clay from Nomics, where there was a lot of talk about character and integrity. If we are to believe that what we heard in that conversation from Clay is true, then why isn't there an equal investigation into the rest of the top 10 or top 50 coins? In the article, he said if you think there is a coin we should be looking at more closely, to email them and let them know. But why? Isn't that their job to do? How come they aren't using any wallet tracking software, which would take all of about 10 minutes to uncover these abnormalities, these obvious abnormalities? I mean, recently, CoffeeZilla, a detective YouTuber who covers scams, used this software to point out very clear and obvious wallet relationships with YouTube influencers. So how come Nomics can't do this? Even if they came up with nothing, the point remains. Why haven't they already done this? You would think a high integrity individual would already find themselves in that line of thinking, right? How do we apply this thought process evenly to the top 10 or whatever versus singling out just one product? I mean, did they really run these checks and come up with nothing? I mean, really? Are we really to believe that out of the entire top 100 coins, Hex is the only one you found that has wallets where large amounts of coins don't move, or that matched your criteria to have it removed from circulating supply? If Nomics has already scanned the top 100 coins, then in the spirit of transparency and integrity, I say they should publish their findings. And if they haven't, they should do so. An aggregator that prides itself in unbiased data reporting would have already done this.